Daniel Stone is the Executive Director of Diffusion.Au, a political and policy strategy firm, and a former senior strategist for the Australian Labor Party.
Cost of living is really at the top of people's minds. Energy, food, things like that have increased significantly in cost over the last, 3 or 4 years. And some of the behaviour that's happening in the US is only contributing to a nervousness about personal economic security. So we've seen both major parties really try and make pitches about how they're going to help improve people's lives in that respect.
And in terms of the major parties, the Labour Party, the incumbent government, polling has shown quite a stark turnaround from what seemed like a likely defeat to a possible win. Are we seeing a kind of parallel of what we saw happening in Canada recently, this sort of rallying around the incumbent government in the shadow of Donald Trump and unpredictable US foreign policy looming large? You mentioned the sense of nervousness there is there.
Yeah, I don't think that it's quite the same as what's happening in Canada. To some extent, the political atmosphere in the United States has affected Australia, but nowhere near the same extent. I think what we've seen is two really big things sort of happen over the last 6 weeks of this campaign. We saw the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, who's the Conservative Party leader, the Liberal National Party leader, launched sort of two policies that really crippled him with constituencies that he really needed to win. Firstly, he announced a dialing back of work-from-home provisions, which landed like an absolute thud with particularly out-of-suburban working families, the people who are feeling the most economic pressure and stress that he most needs to win. He had to apologise and retract the policy after only a couple of days, and honestly, I think a lot of people still doubt how committed he is to their interests as a result. And then the second thing, which also landed a really bad blow, is that he had announced a long-term nuclear power plan, even though Australia has no nuclear industry, no nuclear power, no ability or no knowledge about how to construct this. All of the modelling suggests it was going to be astronomically expensive and take more than 50 years before any of the power came online. And it just didn't add up with some of the more business-minded or kind of rational economic voters who were also traditionally conservative supporters. The two of those together led him into a place where he just wasn't able to build a working coalition, and his support fell away pretty quickly.
It just goes to show that election campaigns can really go in any unpredictable directions. And turning to foreign policy, how difficult is it for Canberra to strike a balance between being a very strong US ally with the growing influence of China in the Asia-Pacific region? China, of course, being by far Australia's biggest trading partner, not the US.
Australia is part of Asia, and China is our largest trading partner. We have extremely close ties with most of the nations in our region across the South Pacific and across Southeast Asia, and very much see each other as friends. Meanwhile, we also have a kind of cultural and sort of values association with not just the United States, but also the United Kingdom and much of Europe too. And we're always in a process of trying to find the equilibrium between who we are and where we belong geographically, and the relationships of our friends and neighbours, as well as sort of, where we sit in the world on a more cultural level as well.
And data is suggesting a rise in swing voters in Australia, with support for the big parties, Labor, the Conservative leaning coalition, opposition falling. How has the political scene in Australia been fragmenting? We were also hearing about a generational shift.
31% of people in the last election actually prioritised a minor party candidate as their number one preference, which is an incredibly large number, a big shift. So even though we're not seeing it necessarily in the makeup of the parliament, there is a real pull away from the major parties.